Welcome back to Barrel Banter.
Banter, 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 banter.
That's right. It is Jared and Payton today. As we said in our last show, if you're a low listener, Will is not here today. Will has gotten married. Congratulations to Will and
Congrats,
Lexi.
Will. You
Let's
did it.
go. So, because of that, and we're allowing him to celebrate his honeymoon, it's just the two of us, Peyton, you, me, taking on the show again. Um, this time, like you said, Will has a pass. But
Yep.
love to get this thing kicked off, Peyton. What do you got for us today? What are you drinking? What's the crack?
Yeah, so I am having some Midwinter Dram, a little pour of that. So, as you know,
Lovely.
Jared, it's a very, very nice selection. This is also
Absolutely.
my second drink of the day. I
Okay.
Yeah, I had a breakfast margarita at 9:30 a.m. this morning.
Is that a special version of a margarita or just a margarita at breakfast time?
I'm glad you asked because I got a little hoodwinked. So we're at the restaurant,
Oh.
right? The whole family's there. We're having a good time. We're gonna get some good food at this Mexican restaurant we live next to, right?
Mm-hmm.
So we walk in, the vibes are popping off. There's tables with, mimosas. We got micheladas over here. We got Bloody Marys. It's feeling great. My wife goes, "Hey, you should get their breakfast margarita." And I was like, "Oh, that sounds awesome. I bet it's, like a tequila sunrise." I figured it was gonna be, tequila and orange juice, right?
Right.
So the lady comes over. I was like, "Yeah, can I get a breakfast margarita?" And she laughs, and she's like, "Yeah, you want salt on it?" I was like, "Yeah, sure." I was like, "Well, that's
Absolutely.
kind of weird." I was like, "Maybe there's something on my face." So she comes back, and it's just a straight up normal lunch dinner margarita,
It's
just a mix and tequila.
Yeah, it's not an anything margarita. It is an absolute margarita. That is amazing. What time was
Yeah,
that?
9:30 in the morning. So
Let's go.
yeah,
Happy
so I've been trying to ride
Sunday.
this high.
Happy Sunday. Oh, I love that. So, breakfast
Yeah,
margaritas in the morning and a midwinter's night drum in the
yeah,
evening. Some a high west best. So, that's lovely,
yeah,
man. Thanks for
yeah. Then
sharing.
we left the restaurant, and my wife proceeded to tell me, she's like, "Yeah, I just made that up. Like, there's no breakfast margarita."
Oh man, you got it. That's
I got
amazing.
got. So yep, I'll
Hey,
leave it
but
at that. I got.
what really bad thing happened to you? You had a margarita. Like, is that bad?
Yeah, I will say it was kind of weird, like having that much acidity, like at nine
Mm-hmm.
thirty in the morning. But
Fair,
other than
fair.
that, it was a great way to start the day. So now
Good.
we're here.
I love that for you. Nice and warmed up and ready to go for this pod.
Yep, let's get it, buddy.
Well, over here, I intentionally selected my pour of the night. I try to bring it back to our roots a little bit of our F1 flights days where we curated our flights for these podcasts on the happenings of the week. But
Heck yeah.
I yet again am going for Bulleit Bourbon. And no, this is not a I just don't have anything else. I do, and I really would want to drink something else. But let's just say that our main event that we will be talking about, the main topic of the week, not to put too many spoilers, was a little bit of a rinse and a repeat of past history. So I felt like I would honor that by just rinsing, repeating, and Bulleit Bourbon is here again 2 weeks in a row. So stay
There you
tuned
go.
for what that means. Not being too cryptic, but
Yeah. I love the passive aggressiveness and picking that bourbon out.
wait, was I passive aggressive there? Oh
It's
no, it
like,
came
wow,
through.
this is the same crap I got, so I'm drinking the same crap I got last week.
Yeah. Oh geez. Maybe that was intentional. Maybe it
maybe
wasn't,
more,
but
maybe more petty. There
yeah,
we
just
go.
a little bit petty. But I am enjoying it. Like, don't get me wrong, I enjoy it. I'm here for it. I'm excited. Would do it again. Like, I'd still be okay with Bulleit to continue. But again, we'll get into that later. What we want to do, kick it off before we get into our main topic. Um, we just want to talk about some of the big happenings in sports, and honestly, there's been a lot of
Just in
records.
like past 2 days.
Yeah, just past 2 days, records
Yeah.
being broken, kind of mementos, high notes, things happening in sports, but been quite a few. So, Peyton, why don't you kick
Yeah.
us off and bring us up to speed of what's happening?
Yeah, so we got two of them that happened today and yesterday in the basketball world. First off, last night, LeBron James became the first ever 40,000 point scorer. Last night, that is March 2nd. That was a Friday night. Um, so he already had the all time points record in the NBA. And so this is just him becoming the first to get to that 40,000. I don't remember what it was when he broke it. It was like 38 or 39, something like that last year. Um, yeah, and then today, probably just I think it was 2 hours ago, right before we got on, Jared, Caitlin Clark,
Mm-hmm.
guard for Iowa Hawkeyes women's
Mm-hmm.
basketball. She broke the all-time NCAA scoring record, which is for men and women's basketball. She passed Pistol Pete
That's right.
out of LSU, and I think he was there in the 70s.
That
Anyways,
that would be my
I don't
guess.
know. Yeah, I don't know the exact points because it just happened like 2 hours ago, but pretty incredible, especially considering she's only a junior too. So
Mm-hmm.
really cool. Or 4 years. I know she had one more year of eligibility. I don't know how it works with all these extra years they're getting with COVID and everything, but
Mm-hmm.
yeah, so pretty nuts.
Yeah, those are some crazy scoring records. I'm sitting here thinking I would love to hear your thoughts on it. Like, which one is more impressive? The longevity of LeBron's career in the Professional National Basketball Association, scoring 40,000 points. No one else has done it. He is at the top. Or Caitlin Clark in a college career, also, which is limited in time, and playing, talking about all college basketball, men's and women's, having the all time scoring record. What do you think is more impressive?
That's tough, man. I think I'm gonna go with Caitlin Clark, just because, like, yeah, LeBron's amazing. We haven't seen anything like this before. But the Caitlin Clark one is just awesome. First off, like, I didn't think that record was ever gonna get broke, especially
Mm-hmm.
like from like a male athlete, just because they always leave so early.
Right.
And then on the women's basketball side, like they play such amazing fundamental basketball that like there's no hero ball, and it's like very hard unless you're a generational talent, which she is, to just be going and averaging 25 plus every year at college.
Mm-hmm.
So the fact that like she broke the women's record and then just the all time like men's or women's basketball record, I think that
Mm-hmm.
one is probably the cooler one. But what do you think, Jared?
Yeah, I think I want to lean that way as well. Like, I'm not taking anything away from LeBron. Like, the fact that he's had longevity in his career is wildly impressive. And to anyone else getting close to that and touching that later, that'll be another feat. But there's
Hmm.
something about getting a record that has time constraints on it. Like, that's for Caitlin Clark. She exists in that space in college basketball. Like, you only have so much time and you only have so many games. And to get in there and do that on a level across both men's and women's basketball and a record that has been standing, like you said, probably since the 70s.
Yeah.
Who knows? It was 40, 50 years ago. Coming in and doing that is just a really dominant performance and just super impressive. So, really cool that both of those happened within, I don't know, 24 hours of each other.
Yeah, nuts, dude,
Yeah,
nuts.
yeah, yeah.
What do you got for us, Jared?
Kind of, you see a little follow up of how the combine went. The NFL combines. This is where the college football players that have declared for the draft, if they're a high enough caliber, they get invited to the combine to show off all their skills, everything from how fast they can run to how far they can jump and sorts. But one of the main events of the NFL Combine is the 40-yard dash, just as fast as you can. It's everybody from quarterbacks, receivers, linemen. They're putting up as fast as they can numbers on 40 yards, and the all-time 40-yard dash time record in NFL Combine history has been broken by a wide receiver
Nuts,
out of the University of Texas, and he ran 40 yards in 4.21 seconds. Um,
nuts, dude.
I don't know if I need to like translate this to European numbers and metric, but like that's just fast. Everybody should just know that's fast.
Yeah. Think of the fastest football player that you've seen, and then speed that up. That's
Yeah.
probably an accurate,
Hmm.
assessment of how fast he was going.
Yeah, it's brilliantly quick. So just another thing to tackle onto all these sports records. But
Yeah.
the 40-yard dash is always such a spectacle because people love comparing their times and being quick is important and all these things. Especially like this
Yeah.
guy Xavier Worthy, he's a receiver. The NFL loves to make a meme out of Patrick Mahomes' 40-yard dash.
Yeah. The
He didn't run the
comparison.
fastest one, but also Patrick Mahomes is a three-time Super Bowl champion, multiple league
Yep.
MVP. So people do
He's the
say maybe
current
there's
goat.
the current GOAT. Like people say there's not too much weight to consider um, in this. Also, Tom Brady. just ran a 40-yard
Yes.
dash. He's retired, right? And he's in his
Yep.
40s. His 40-yard dash he ran, I think last week for fun, was faster than his NFL combine time when he was coming out of college.
Yeah. What they say it was like 24 years ago?
Probably easily.
Yeah, it was at least 20 years ago. Yeah, because he played for over 20 years. So, yeah, that's just nuts. And I will say, dude, I watched the video of that.
Hmm.
He looked pretty good, man. He was
He's
booking it. Now, that doesn't mean he can take a hit from a 300-pounder anymore, but he was
right.
looking good, man. He's still in
Yeah.
good shape.
You got to think
But
like 20 years of professional development and just like great workout regimens and nutrition and all these things and so much discipline compared to just being young and like athletic because your body just is that way. Um,
yeah,
the older gentleman won.
yep, it's amazing. But yeah, just to speak on that 40-yard dash again by Xavier Worthy. I mean, that was so incredible, and it's like hard for people to understand like how much time and preparation goes into these kids that participate in that because not all of them decide to run it, but the ones that do, they are like literally at a track and just
Hmm.
practicing that for months
Hmm.
leading up. Just because that little bit of time can be the difference between making an extra $4 million or not
Oh,
and
100%.
going first round or fourth round. I mean, there was a Clemson defensive back. I don't remember if he was a safety or cornerback that ran on, I believe, Friday, and he ran like I think it was like a 4.29. It was low, but he pulled his hamstring
Yes,
doing that race.
I
Like
did hear about that.
they go hard on that, and
Hmm.
it's one of the funnest things to watch. But yeah, I also saw they were. I got an alert from ESPN about the quarterbacks lighting it up or whatever during their drills, and so I click on it. It's just a side note, but I click on it, and the only videos they had on there was of them throwing deep balls. Like, oh my gosh, they're killing it. They're throwing it 60 yards. Well, yeah, there's no skill in that. We can have Uncle Rico come throw it 30 yards and we're gonna think he's killing it. Like
Yeah, it's really like, oh, how far can you throw it? No, it's definitely more about passing accuracy, but
Yeah.
either way, they got to show off their skills. Like I kind of mentioned earlier, like the 40-yard dash is important, but like how important it is all, but it's kind of all over like just showcasing your skills. So
Yeah.
all that to say, a couple crazy days in sports of just records being broken, things being happening, accomplishments. I mean, how high will the scoring record go, and how low can these times on these sprints go? I don't know.
No one knows, man. We're just getting freakier and freakier as athletes. So.
Pretty much. But if we want to shift the tide a little bit of this conversation to just more, I don't know, freaky dominance and how far can just incredible
Well done, by the
athleticism
way.
go, let's talk the Bahrain Grand Prix.
Oh,
Whoop
here we go.
whoop. First race of the 2024 Formula One season. Today,
Yep.
just to say it, like today's Sunday, and there was no Grand Prix this morning. It was
It's weird.
yesterday. Saturday race, Friday quali, Thursday practice. A little bit
I
weird. I
thought
think
yesterday
they.
was Sunday, dude. Jack me up.
Oh, I actually saw a just to bring this up right away. I saw a tweet that said there's a non-zero chance that some Formula One fan got up and got dressed for work this morning because he's so ingrained in the routine of Sunday Formula One,
Yep.
back to the office grind on Monday.
That was almost me, dude. Almost me. But
Almost,
instead,
almost.
I had margarita breakfast, so my weekend's all screwed up.
Yeah, you don't know what time it is, what day it is. It don't matter
Yeah,
there.
I feel like
But
I'm on a beach right now.
jeez. So yeah, let's run through a little bit of the race the weekend, but I'd like to start it out on quali just to get the stage set of where we got into it. Um, Going into this, right? Expectations were all over the place. I think a lot of people kept their hopes up because we still didn't really know where teams are at, what the real
Yep.
true pace of them are, and in a bit of predictable fashion, we had Verstappen on pole,
Hmm.
Charles Leclerc in P2, barely missing out on sitting on pole, and then George Russell in P3.
That was
So
a surprise, dude.
that was nice. The thing about that was gave people still the hope, the hopium all, was that Charles
Hmm.
Leclerc's Q2 time was faster than Max's pole time. So everybody's like, they're still figuring it out. The Ferrari's probably still faster than the Red Bull. So either
Yeah,
way, the stage is set, and we still have no clue how Sunday race day is going to go. But
yeah.
oh,
That
did race day go?
it did. That real quick. That Charles qualifying session was a load of baloney, dude. I thought Benito was back there being team principal on that. I don't
Baloney.
know why they used an extra set of fresh new softs on Q1.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, to your point, he would have beaten Verstappen's pole time in Q2, but when Q3 came around, he had to use a used set of softs. He didn't have any new ones left, and Verstappen
Mm-hmm.
did. So I mean, he could have took pole,
Mm-hmm.
but I don't understand why you're using that many softs in Q1. It's not like he was in 12th or whatever after his flying lap. I mean, he was top 5 or top 10. Like he was going to be okay.
I do wonder on that if that kind of what I was speaking about earlier, that like even the team principals and the teams didn't actually know where everybody was stacking up. And what was
Yeah,
it in Q1? The only person who didn't go out for a final lap, now fresh tires or scrub tires aside, was Signs, right? Because wasn't
yeah,
Signs
because
at
he
the top of
was
the table?
one. Yeah,
And so the fact that he was the only one that didn't go out, like everybody still had a little bit of, oh no, like it's anybody's game still. So going out on the fresh offs, who knows? Either way, I think we can jump into the race and we'll see that
yeah,
pole may not have been Charles's day anyways. So
yeah.
what happened in the race, Peyton? What happened?
Oh gosh. So we went lights out. Verstappen, being Verstappen, got aggressive defensively, led into the first corner, and then the rest was history. He led all laps. He had a little espresso with some
Mm-hmm.
crepes while he was driving throughout the
Yep,
race, just on a little Saturday night cruise. Just
absolutely.
having a great time, checking the video boards when he would go by. So yeah, his race was fine. After that, it really got kind of crazy because, to your point, Jared, this is the first time we're like seeing like competitive race pace out of everybody. So, and it's hard to gauge what the real order is besides like outside of Red Bull because Bahrain is such a unique track.
Mm-hmm.
So it was interesting to like see, Charles have his brake issues, and then George was looking good, and then he fell back, and then my buddy Carlos Sainz Jr. just coming out of nowhere charging through. And then you had Alonso dropping back. Hamilton kind of just stayed in no man's land. Norris and the McLarens were coming up. I mean, it was just a lot of moving. And even at the back of the grid, it was interesting to see, V Carb kind of struggling and
Mm-hmm.
when they were hyping each other up. The Alpine tractors were completely terrible driving their John Deere tractors. I think they started 19th and 20th. They didn't make much progress.
Mm-hmm.
So it was exciting to be back. But to your point, Jared, with the Bulleit Bourbon, we did get a rinse and repeat of Verstappen P1 and Sergio P2. But
Mm-hmm.
yeah, if you want, we can get in and talk about all the teams and dive in because I mean
Yeah, yeah.
it's hard to just give a brief overview.
No, I do appreciate the toss up there of bringing this back to the bullet and the reason why I chose this. At one point, I think Max, I might be hyperbolizing here a bit, but I think he had a 50-second lead at some point. And I
He did
understand that there's
before he
there's
pitted the last time.
yeah, there's pit stops and things in there and variations, but he was comfortable. Like you said, he's up there. He's got the music on loud, just
Mm-hmm.
singing, vibing. His race pace was incredible. And Perez coming in, even though Perez finished 22.45 seconds behind, 22 and a half seconds behind, still P2. I mean, Red Bull
Yeah.
showed up. So,
Yeah.
yeah. So the little bit of feeling of a rinse and repeat, but we are here. So, like you said, I agree with you, Peyton. Let's run through it. Um, shall we start? I don't know. Should we start with the back? Go Alpine?
Yeah, let's start at the back because I heard a commentators talk about like the top 10 finishes. Like it's a little bit of Noah's Ark. You got two Red Bulls, two Ferraris, two. So yeah, we'll start at the back where it's more boring or more exciting.
Alpine will give us some good stuff to chat about. Like you said, start qualified P19, P20, absolute tractors, and they finished the race. What was it? P17 and P18. And you're like, oh,
Yeah, I
great,
believe
they made up
so.
places. The only way they made up places was because of the two people that finished behind him. Logan Sargent, his car forgot how to turn at some point.
Yeah, that
Apparently,
was
it was
crazy.
a.
Did you hear the audio on that?
I just heard him be like frustrated. I didn't actually hear like any breakdown of if there's a commentary between him and an engineer. Was
Yeah.
there?
Yeah, so well, you could like check the onboard and you could see like his screen kind of wigging out. And I think like it almost sounded like, and they were talking about it on F1 TV, it almost sounded like his car just like the throttle just like kept going.
Mm-hmm.
And so he had to like run off. So I don't know if that was like, you know, a problem specifically with his, his throttle, or if that was a tech issue on the steering wheel, but it was weird because he just had to run off.
Yeah, it sounds like it came down to a steering wheel issue. Which I mean, poor Logan Sargent. This is not the start of the new season he needs. He needed that confidence boost, and I'm sure a lot of people are immediately just going for him, being like, "This guy's bad, get him out of there." But what
Mhm.
appeared to happen is the steering wheel had an issue. It it changed his brake balance to something. I think it was like 90% forward, which they say like no F1 driver would ever set that brake balance, and then it just
Yeah.
didn't work. So he ended up swapping steering wheels in the pit. And this is an interesting point I want to bring up actually. So we started Alpine and we got to Williams. We'll get through them all, but
Uh-huh.
both Williams drivers had steering wheel issues. And Williams brought a new steering wheel to the grid this year
Yep.
with the screen integrated and made a big deal about it, low key like had a launch about it.
We're
And
like everybody else now.
yeah, and yeah, like we're doing everything everybody else is doing, but Logan Sargent's decided to change his brake balance and forget to turn the car. And Alex Albon said the screen was too bright and he couldn't see his knobs. So when they're telling him to change like engine modes or something, he's like very like audibly complaining and frustrated. He's like the screen and I can't see the knobs and things like that.
Yeah.
And so just really interesting that that's causing issues as race one.
Yeah, that's weird, especially if, like, for Alex because he's raced for Red Bull, which they would have had
Hmm.
the normal steering wheel, not the
Right.
barbaric one Williams was using. So that's weird. And like I was watching multiple different onboards and they all had different levels of brightness. So you can
Hmm.
obviously change the screen on the steering wheel. And then, I heard over radio they were having trouble like, hitting the buttons and stuff when they were turning. But
Hmm.
it's like, okay, well, you're in the old school steering wheel you had, the screen was, on the car. So even when you're turning, it's still gonna block the screen. So I I'm confused that, yeah, it's a new thing, but just say it's a new thing. Like you don't have to make
Yeah.
up these poor excuses. But
I do think maybe their screen was too bright. They definitely looked at the brightest
yeah.
screen, but I don't think Formula One cars are like your road cars. You just reach down by your knee and kind of scroll that knob down to take your in-car brightness down. So that
Yeah.
I'm sure this will be a fixed and resolved issue come next
Oh yeah,
week.
for sure.
So that was an interesting tidbit. Yeah, Alpine being terrible. I was talking about Williams. What about the steak guys? There's some fun with steak.
Yeah, so steak, I wish they were actually like a ribeye steak or something, but instead we got to watch a Nickelodeon slime fest with that green on there. But no, I mean I will say Joe Granu did a really good job. I think he ended up finishing 11th,
He had
which,
the most places gained in the race for sure.
yeah, he did a phenomenal job, and they barely showed him. But he was just doing his own race and passed people, which that was good to see. So I almost wonder if Botas didn't get damage in the first corner, so he ended up. So I guess we should have covered this. So there was an incident on the first turn, the first lap. So um, Hulkenberg tagged Stroll going into the first corner when Stroll was coming over, and then you had Botas behind Hulkenberg, and when Hulkenberg had to suddenly stop and tag Stroll, that's when Botas kind of tagged Hulkenberg, and he had a jacked up, what was it, the right side of his wing, So I almost wonder if he didn't have damage and have to come in early for a new set of tires that was unrelated. I wonder if he kind of would have been up there with Joe, or if Joe was just driving incredible. But it's
Hmm.
hard to know.
Yeah, I mean that could have been a what if situation, but ultimately, the other big thing that happened with the stake team is Valtteri Bottas experienced his joke second worst pit stop in his career, behind his
Yeah,
Monaco disaster. A 52-second pit stop for Valtteri Bottas. The front left, I believe, maybe the wheel nut got cross threaded and they had to go
yeah.
get a complete new wheel nut and wheel, and you're just seeing the men in lime green running around the car trying to make it happen. And you know
We see the guy like banging it on the ground.
yes, and then the gunner of that wheel just looks so sad when he gets handed the new nut and he just puts it on the ground and he's kind of just like slumps, and it's just so
Yeah,
sad because he knows like it happens, mistakes happen, but it was like a big mistake. And that's the reason that
that's their whole
Alpine
race.
moved up because Valtteri had a 52-second pit stop and Logan had about the same, and him going off track. And yeah, they were well behind the rest of the pack.
Yeah, that was just sad to see, and it's you feel bad for those pit crews mechanics because like that is like outside of all the work that goes in between the practices and qualifying and the race, like that is their life.
Hmm.
So when something out of your control, or maybe it wasn't in their control, who knows, but happens like that, that's got to be like so defeating and
Hmm.
demoralizing. It's like I want to compare it to like a football kicker, game on the line, get a field goal going. That's your only job, and you shank it. Like it's got to be close to the same feeling. Like yeah. And then after that, he was just doing test run for data. So that's
Hmm.
that's tough for Botas.
Yeah, definitely disappointment there. But again, first race of the season, so things to learn from, move on. But
Yep.
let's talk about Haas here. I thought
Oh,
Haas had. I mean, if you could just like sum up a stereotypical Haas experience in Formula One, it is Nico Hulkenberg qualifying where the car should never be, and then something ridiculous happening. The
yeah,
Haas just exploding, getting in a collision, and finishing so far down the grid. It's just so sad for them. What are your thoughts on them?
dude. Yeah, I mean, to your point, Jared, it's like the typical Haas move, and I feel so bad for Hulkenberg because even last year when he got those, what was it like 8 or 9 like Q3 um positions he got, like there always was like something happened, and then if something didn't happen, like an incident, then his tires were terrible on his race trim and he was getting super high degradation. So I felt bad for him because like that's like the most Haas move is him bumping into Stroll.
Yep.
And then the fact that like Kevin Magnussen showed that like as of right now they've taken a step forward on their tire decks. It was like, okay, what could have Hulkenberg done like if he didn't hit Stroll? So
Mm-hmm.
it's just the most Haas thing, and I wish Steiner was there because we would have got
Jeez.
so many f bombs
Yep.
on the pit wall of that happening, and
Yeah.
then that call to Gene afterwards.
Yeah.
Oh,
We look like a bunch of amateurs. I gotta call Gene.
yeah,
Rinse and
Gene, we
repeat, man.
suck.
So bad. Look like some amateurs. Yeah. So,
What'd you think about it?
I mean, besides the fact that it was a just like if you could sum up a rinse and repeat, just like Haas pain train. I was surprised that they were anywhere remotely competitive in
Right?
terms of pace. The fact that they and I think it does come to show like testing is really hard to know what's going on. Even practice, they
Mm-hmm.
were focusing constantly on race pace and long runs because that's where their struggle always is. Hulkenberg showed, like
Yep.
you said, I think it was 8 times in Q3 last year. He can do a quick lap, and I think Ao Komatsu came out and said, "I don't need to
Dude, you
worry
nailed
about."
that name, by the way.
Oh, thank you, I appreciate that. I didn't practice, but
Nailed
I
it.
got it. So, but he came out and said, I don't have to worry about our car's one lap pace because I have a great driver in Nico Hulkenberg, which I believe he just said Nico. He didn't pull out Magnussen, which that's interesting. And I know he can take that car and do a quick lap. so I can take our time with the
Wow.
team and focus on long runs. And I think that's high praise on Hulkenberg, who's honestly like killing it for what he's got in a car. But I hope for better. I don't expect better.
Yep. No, I agree. It was promising, but like you've mentioned, it's the first race of the year. We got 23 more, so and they're not the best at upgrades. So usually their strong point is like the first 8 races. So it'll be interesting to see how this goes.
Hmm. Other than that, we have the that's the less sharp end of the grid. So um,
Yeah.
we had McLaren, Aston
Oh, we didn't do
Martin.
V carb,
Oh, we didn't do V carb.
and
I guess
it's juicy there right
V
now.
carb. Oh man, I honestly like. There's just so much about V carb I want to talk about. That's post race. Oh geez,
Yes.
V carb. Not as competitive as I
Visa, Cash
expected.
App, Red Bull Racing.
Yeah, Visa, Cash App, Racing Bulls, Racing RB
Yeah.
Powertrain, Honda. Who knows? But overall, not as competitive as I expected. I think their strategy was a little kind of muffed. So,
Yep.
conspiracy theory, they're really good. It is the RB19 in a fun, colorful livery, and they are
Yep.
just dialing back. They don't want to piss off Zach Brown too early.
Nope. But they will crank it up, and I would imagine. I mean, if it is super like RB19, which they have the same suspension, so many same parts, I would expect a good result from them out of Jeddah next week, just because it's like a
Mhm.
high speed corners and a fast track. So I would expect some good performance, but I almost wonder like this probably isn't the case because they want to do good, but if they might sandbag it until their first upgrade just so they can tell Zach Brown, like, what are you talking about, dude? We're completely independent. Look at this. We
Yeah,
sucked, and then we had a great
yeah,
upgrade.
yeah. Great upgrade. We'll believe when we see it, but I still hold out hope for them. I'd like to save the post race shenanigans for the end of this little review wrap. What do you think?
Yep, that's cool. Yeah, that works for me because that was quite
Hmm.
juicy.
So that happened. Sorry, yeah. Back to the pointy end of the grid. I don't really know what to say about like McLaren or Aston Martin. I mean, they were there, but they weren't
Yeah,
there
Aston looked
there.
bad, dude.
Well, Aston
They
still
look.
was suffering from the disparity of Alonso being a two-time world champion, Alonso, and driving well, and
Mhm.
Stroll not putting it there. So, but I like, what do you got? Do you have
But he
anything?
did this race. I mean, they were 9 and 10.
Fair, fair, yeah.
So it's just a drastic difference between how they started last year and how they started this year.
Fair.
Which if you put it in a vacuum, like it's still good what they're doing. It's just
Yeah.
they had such progress at the beginning of last year that like this feels like a letdown, even though it's like I'm sure it's a little bit better version of how they finished the year, but it's just tough. Seeing Alonso stick it in. What was it, fifth or sixth in Q3?
Something around there, yeah.
It was six. Yeah,
Checking.
he's behind Perez. Yeah. So it's just tough because he's an amazing driver, but you could just tell, like, I think it maybe took 2 or 3 laps, and you could tell the race pace was just not there. He started dropping, which is tough. So we'll see what they have in their upgrade, but yeah, it was just kind of a sad performance. They were just, they're going to be fifth in constructors off of this race, but we'll see what they do. What'd you think about them?
Yeah, so you were correct. Fernando put it into P6. But yeah, I think it's a game of they might have taken a step back to try to reset and figure out the fundamentals of what their car really is to try to figure out how to develop it further.
Hmm.
Everybody else is kind of catching up. Red Bull's obviously in a world of its own, but
Yep.
I think there's still potential there, and I don't for a second think that Lawrence Stroll is going to pull off the gas on this, and he's going to keep developing, keep spending money.
Not
Really
at all.
excited to see the cost cap reports come out for last
For
year.
last
See
year, yeah.
how many billions he spent, and just said, "I don't care. I want to be good." So we'll see on that. But I think overall, I mean, they fell in the places probably about where people expected. McLaren
Mm-hmm.
maybe less so than expectations, but I think their expectations started to get squashed a little bit as testing ended and practice kind of went, and realized that they weren't as competitive as the hype kind of showed them to be last year, with
Mm-hmm.
Ferrari and Mercedes being up there. So overall, fine. But I mean, this is also a side effect of a fact about the race that hasn't been mentioned yet. But nobody DNF'd. Everybody finished. And this is happening
Yeah.
more and more often in Formula One. And genuinely, halfway through the race, or three quarters of the race, I'd say, I looked at the grid and I'm thinking of qualifying times were so tight, so close. All the intervals are really like tight. The grid is so compact. Cars are so competitive to less than a second. And then you look at the grid on race day, 75% of the race, and everybody's 3, 4 seconds away, just chilling. All right, this is
Yeah.
my spot. I'm hanging
DRS
out.
trains.
And not even. There was at one point it was one car out of 20 had DRS, and they were just chilling.
Wow.
So I think that was kind of a side effect of this race. But I keep telling myself, I've said this a bunch of times in the pod already. Like, it's the first race.
Yep.
Maybe not everybody's gonna show their cards yet. We're kind of still
It's
figuring it
hard not
out.
to overreact.
It is. I mean, and this is probably what their 5 millionth lap around Bahrain in the last months, or like get me out of here
Yeah.
and just get to a new circuit. So we'll see what next week brings. But that's really all I got on those two teams. And then let's bring it up to
Oh, dude, hold on. I didn't even touch McLaren. I
oh, get in
wanna,
there.
dude. I'm about to fanboy real quick. I'll make it
Okay,
quick so we
please,
can move on.
please. Oh, you're
But
fine.
love me some Lando Norris. He's got to clean up his qualifying. He used to be great in qualifying, but that was back when he had a crap car. Now he's got a good car, and I think he's putting too much pressure on himself. He's probably like, outside of Max Verstappen, he's probably the hardest on himself as far as the drivers go.
Fair.
And he's got to let go of that some. But I was super encouraged about their race pace because Bahrain, typically, if you don't even count last year because their car was crap at this time, they have never been good at this track. They are not good at slow corners, and for a while they weren't good at like straight line speed either. So the fact that, they really focus on the off season of getting better in the slow speed corners, because last year after that big upgrade, they were killing it on straight line speed and especially high corner speeds. So the fact that they were able to upgrade that was super encouraging, and they
Mm-hmm.
finished, what was it? Was it fifth and sixth or sixth and seventh?
McLaren
Either way, it was a
finished
really.
6th and 8th. Lando in 6th, Oscar in 8th.
Oh yeah, because Lewis split them.
Mm-hmm.
But I thought it was a really good result for them for a track that doesn't suit their car. So
Mm-hmm.
I'm super hopeful they figure that out. I just really hope that it didn't compromise their high speed cornering, because when we went to high speed tracks, they were last year they were the only ones that could fight Red Bull. So I
Mm-hmm.
really hope they didn't sacrifice on that. So we'll see next week. But right now, I'm feeling bubbly. I'm feeling encouraged by them. So we'll see what happens.
No, that's a really good take, and I'm glad you brought that up because I think kind of my commentary on it is that it really was a game of expectations being a little bit too high for McLaren coming into
Yeah.
like Bahrain specifically, which McLaren. What I mean, if you really look at it, McLaren, I don't know if they've ever admitted they have a track that they're good at. They're always like, "Oh, this isn't our track. This isn't our track," and like
That's true.
downplay everything. But I mean, you look at the jump from last year, McLaren Bahrain, to this year. It is a fundamentally better car for them and a good base for them to develop off of. So it's gonna stay juicy at the top, like regardless. Same thing, Aston. They got
Hmm.
the support behind them. McLaren's got the right direction, and we got the other three teams. Like it's gonna stay juicy at the top.
Yeah, it's gonna be great.
So, and those other three teams, Ferrari, McLaren. Nope, not McLaren. We just talked about McLaren. Ferrari, Mercedes, and
Yeah.
Red Bull.
You
Whoops.
want to start with Mercedes?
Yeah, Mercedes. I got a couple notes on Mercedes. I can go on that.
Hit us, Jared. Fire us up.
So, I mean, every year, the fundamentally new car actually this year like brought the biggest gust of hope to the Mercedes fan base, and they're listening to Lewis. They know he's going out. They're going to give him everything to deliver that eighth championship, and we think it's going to be all roses. sometimes look competitive, topping the times in, what was it, P2 or something ridiculous like that.
Yeah.
And then qualifying, I mean, okay, so Lewis P9 in qualifying, not great at all. George P3, good, but still he was 3 tenths down from Verstappen.
Hmm.
And so it's not there yet. And it's just like you get that feeling of like, oh, this is a rinse and repeat. But apparently, here's my notes, and I did some math for these notes. Mercedes decided
Uh-oh.
to change their cooling, where they have the cooling lubes, whatever, on the back of the car, and they close them for Bahrain
Is
for
that
the
for the
race,
engine?
for the engine, right? And
Okay.
I think they were thinking there's maybe like an aerodynamic trade off there where Bahrain was cooler than they expected, and so they could get better pace out of it, but it turned out to backfire. And now these are Toto's words, and take them how you are, and also this is like doing math in a vacuum, but they said it cost them a half a second per lap. So I did the math because they were overheating, right? Like halfway through the race, they're getting lift and coast
Yeah.
calls, and that's just not great for the first race. So
No.
if in a vacuum you take their race time and you do the Bahrain Grand Prix is 57 laps, right?
Yep.
And so then you have second lap. That's 28 and a half seconds reduced from each of their Grand Prix times. That would put George P2 and Lewis P3 in the race, theoretically in a vacuum. Um,
Interesting.
but George would be 18 seconds behind Verstappen still, and Lewis would be 21.8, so almost 22. So he would finish right in front of Perez. Now, obviously, on track battles, being in vicinity of DRS, things like that would change it.
Yeah. Pit stops.
But like, is that encouraging, or is that like, well, it doesn't matter because Max is still 20 seconds down the road?
Yeah. I hate to say this, but I'm sure they'll prove me wrong, but I'm kind of leaning towards it being an excuse just because, like, I don't understand. Like, yeah, they've had a lot of turnover in their tech department and everything else on that team. But I really find it hard to believe that a team as solid as them, they pretty much destroyed the 2010s as far as the competition. So I really find it hard to believe that they messed up that bad. And they've used that excuse before, not that specific one, but an excuse like that, you know, last year and then also in 2022. So I'm just, if those reasons are real, they have a lot more problems than just their car that they need to figure out. But I'm leaning towards an excuse just because we've heard a lot. And then also I saw Lewis said, when they asked him how he, you know, dropped down to what was it? What did he qualify in? P9?
Yes.
Was it? Yeah. And he was saying, well, I did this super like aggressive super aggressive tune up or whatever setting on his car to see if it would help him out. And he's used that excuse. He didn't use it too much last year, but all of 2022, that was always his
Mm-hmm.
excuse. Well,
Mm-hmm.
I got risky on the car setup. And he
Yeah.
used it again on Saturday. And I was like, Sunday's not going to go great. And he was thinking it would help him with the race pace, and it didn't happen. So I'm kind of just tired of hearing that from Lewis, you know, and I want to know if it's actually him doing that or the team. Because, last year showed Russell should not be touching Lewis, but yet
Mm-hmm.
just it was like you said, it's the first race of the season, but it gave me flashbacks to 22 when Russell was showing him up because Lewis was doing all this, risky setups to try and, grasp at straws for a fight in the championship. So, we'll see what happens, next week and the next, 23 races, but that gave me some red flags.
Yeah. I hear you on that, and I don't know. Like, again, I mean, I think we could title this podcast episode "Rinse and Repeat Edition," but I
Yeah.
wonder if even the drivers or Lewis and Mercedes and them are getting flashbacks to like, oh no, same story, new year, and
Hmm.
Lewis is like, we got to do everything we can. And Max is on pole. I'm actually gonna try some new engine setup, close the cooling louvers. Who cares? Like, whatever we got to do to be competitive, and it's just like doesn't work because they don't know their car yet. Versus
Yeah.
Now, Red Bull came out a different car, but like Red Bull understands their car from the beginning and has developed to be better. And we're talking games of like this is a game of tenths here over time.
Yep.
Like they're so close, but Red Bull understanding their car versus Mercedes, like not. That's the difference of qualifying P9 and qualifying P1.
Yep.
So,
Exactly. So we'll see what happens, man. But it's getting a little weird down at Mercedes.
hmm and I want to say real quick, let's cover the other two, but I don't know how you can be real quick about this. This can be a long pod. Apologies if the fans out there aren't in favor of that, but there's just so much to talk about. So much expectations, so much what's
Yep.
happening. But when we talk about the boys in red, the guys in scarlet, Carlos and Charles, I don't think we can just brush by how their races went.
Carlos.
Carlos Sainz, absolutely driver of the day. I was pining for it. I said, this man is driver of the day. If Max wins it, I'm rioting. So, Carlos Sainz, driver of the day, came through the field, P3 on the podium. Love to see it. Love to see it. Now, did his teammate Leclerc start P2 in the race? And you're like, how did that happen? Yeah, absolutely. So, Peyton, how did the boys in red, how did Ferrari do?
Oh man, I could go on a tangent, you know, positive and negative on
Yeah.
this. I mean, there's so much to talk about with them. First off, Charles had a terrible race. He was having those braking issues. And, the commentaries were talking about a lot of, you know, it felt like the first 7 laps, it was just nerves, which is, kind of scary for Charles to be having nerves like that. Since he's been, such ice in his veins for the past,
Mm-hmm.
3 or 4 years. But then, like, we started hearing because it just kept happening of him locking up his brakes, especially in turn 10. It's like something's got to be going on. And then they said it was his brakes. So I'm interested, like, what, and we'll never know this because Ferrari won't release it. But I'm interested to see, like, were they faulty brakes? Like, what was the issue to where they couldn't change the settings and him to change his driving style to where they couldn't mitigate that some? So that is an interesting thing to keep an eye on. And then Carlos freaking Sainz, dude.
Mm-hmm.
He was a man on a mission.
Mm-hmm.
The dude, he was sending dive bombs into
Yep.
turn one. He was taking care of his tires at the same time. He was just dude, that was a guy that just got dumped from his team.
Yep.
And he was like, all right, I'm about to show y'all, about to show new teams, even though
Mm-hmm.
he doesn't need to do that because his resume speaks for itself.
Yeah.
But if this is the Carlos Sainz we're getting for the rest of the year,
Oh, yeah.
dude, Sergio better watch out because
Mm-hmm.
as long as they don't have any reliability issues, Carlos is coming for P2. And the
Carl.
fact that he was able to keep up with Sergio at the end of that race when Sergio was on softs and Carlos was on hards was incredible to watch.
Yeah. Definitely, like, I agree with you in sentiment. Like, Carlos doesn't need to necessarily prove himself. Like, his resume does speak for himself. But then again, Formula One has short term memory, and it's always like, what
Yep.
are you doing recently? But that man showed up to the grid and said, this is my job interview starts today. Let me show you what I can do.
Yeah.
And right now, he could go anywhere. He genuinely
Yep. He
could.
could.
So good on him. But also, I mean, like you said, Leclerc, the dude could not make a turn without locking up. Smoke was just
It was bad.
constantly. It looked like he had a Halloween like effects machine coming out of all his wheels. Just all this fog everywhere. I saw a funny graph. Was like it was the Bahrain circuit, and there was like, and then Charles Leclerc line, and it was just like the loopiest, like widest
Yeah.
turns. It's sad to see. Like you think, like man, like is this actually something that's fundamentally wrong with the car? That again is bad luck for Charles, but we'll see. The Ferrari still has
Yeah.
pace. Will they unlock it over the length of a race? TBD.
Yeah, and they said they made progress on high speed corners, which they were kind of lacking in last year. So, next week will be our first glimpse of how much progress they've made on that. But
Mm-hmm.
I would say I've been really impressed with Fred Vasseur.
Mm-hmm.
And, I know there was a lot of negative attention when they appointed him to Ferrari, mainly with the Ferrari fans. But I think this is just the team principle they need. The fact that, we saw it, a little bit last year, especially towards the end, but like this past weekend, he's cool, calm, and collected. They know their strategies of what they're going to do, which wasn't the case before with the last principal. And he's going to let the guys fight. Obviously, he tells them to keep it, respectable, but he's going to let them fight. But he's not afraid to say, yeah, get out of the way. Like, this is what we're doing. And you can just tell, like, there's a sense of he's got control of that team and he's the end all be all, and he's going to tell you exactly what you need, which, in years past, it's kind of like, it's almost been a meme of, you know, the drivers going back and forth with the engineers and the principal of what do we do? What do we do? What do we
Mm-hmm.
do? So it's good to see. And, I think they can do some really good things with Fred. So I've been happy with them so far.
No, seriously, great point. And to bounce right back off of that, like I was watching the race this weekend with some friends, and it came on. I think it was Carlos. He asked a question: when are the hards going to be faster than the softs? That was his question. He's running the race and he needs to figure out the pace that the hards bet in
Mm-hmm.
and be faster, right? And it's the traditional, the classic Ferrari checking, right?
Yeah,
Checking,
we'll be back.
like like so, stay tuned, right? And we're all sitting there like, oh, that's so funny, classic Ferrari, nothing's changed. And I was like, oh, this is like the classic teacher answer, like, oh, let's circle back to that at the end. And like, we're like, there's no intention of them coming back. Like, good luck, yeah, you're never getting the answer, dude. 20, 30 seconds later, Ferrari back on the blower. Say in one lap, the hards will be bedded in and faster than
Yeah.
the softs, and we were all shocked. Like all of us are like, did they actually answer a question with
Yeah.
like speed?
Yeah. Fred doesn't
So
mess around, dude.
no, truly, like it's promising to see. So again, another way to say first race of the season, TBD. But I
Yeah,
think Ferrari has good things to look for.
for sure.
And then there's one left.
Oh, the good old Red Bull. They looked like the Death Star for anybody that's seen Star Wars. They're just going to keep rolling. I mean, it was just a prime example of a team that's unstoppable, super confident, can't do anything wrong. They have the best car designer in the whole field, and
Mm-hmm.
they just pretty much that whole weekend was just slapping Mercedes in the
Mm-hmm.
face of, yeah, your concept was great. You just did it wrong. Watch this.
Yeah.
So I'm interested to see though how that car handles tracks when it's a little hotter, in these day races and, especially May and June. So I just worry about that car overheating. I'm sure they have an answer for that, but let's just see. I am surprised they didn't have any reliability issues. They kind of had some issues on Saturday, but that was mainly because of the wind and stuff. So we'll see. I mean, not Saturday, Friday quality. Jeez, I'm jacked up. So
It's that breakfast
yeah,
margarita,
so
bro.
yeah, we'll see. We'll see what they can do, but it does not look great for the field.
Mm-hmm. It's that thing that like everybody saw coming. Red Bull is inevitable, but we didn't want to believe it. And whatever, if it was intentional or not, sandbagging or not, just the way the weekend played out,
Hmm.
we kept our hope to, I don't know, lap two, maybe. Maybe that's where we kept our
Yeah,
hope. But
yeah, maybe lap two.
Max easily took it away. Congratulations to Red Bull. Whatever. I mean,
Yeah.
beautiful, beautiful job. I'd like to shout out here Jeremy Clarkson. I'm not sure if you're familiar with Jeremy Clarkson, British motorsport journalist, former
Yeah.
Top Gear host, now does Grand Tour
Hmm.
on Amazon. So he was the guy that waved the checkered flag at the Bahrain Grand Prix, but he was on the grid walk for Martin Brundle's grid walk, and Martin Brundle asked him who you think's gonna win it today, or who you think's got it, whatever the question was, and he just said he kind of like smiled and laughed, and it's like like what he's gonna say, and I was fully expecting him to say Max, and he just goes Adrian Newey. I was
Oh
like,
yeah,
that's so funny, but it's like
that's hilarious.
the man is on a roll right now with car designs and aero, and just like he understands this era of Formula One so well. So, and that's evident with Max winning by 22 and a half seconds against his own teammate. So,
Yeah.
just gnarly, insane. So, yeehaw, I guess.
Yeah, no much to say about them. Status quo, rinse and repeat, as you've said. So,
Cheers, Red Bull,
cheers.
you Bulleit Bourbon, you. um, so to wrap, we have to bring back V Carb, Visa Cash
Mm,
App, RB, Daniel Ricciardo and Yuki Tsunoda had a bit of an interaction in the cooldown lap. What's the play-by-play, Peyton? What happened?
yeah. So that's probably the wildest thing I've seen between teammates. Like I don't remember Lewis or Nico ever getting crazy like that. But so what happened was, it was the last stint of the race. Daniel Ricciardo was on the faster softs. Yuki was on the slower hards. Yuki was battling Magnussen for P12, and at this point, Ricardo went from 16th to 14th, and so he was making good progress. He was hot on those softs, and team orders, which is very normal, told Yuki to give way for Ricardo because he was on the faster tire. Obviously, very normal again. Yuki had some very, I wouldn't even call it passive aggressive. It was slightly aggressive commentary of, this is BS and I'm not doing this. So he takes a full lap to finally move over for Ricardo. And by then it's kind of compromised because there's only like 10 ish, maybe 15 laps left, if that. Um, so Yuki's hot. Long story short, Ricardo doesn't end up passing Magnussen, so it's status quo. And then on the cooldown lap, which is very normal because they got to make their way, for people that are new to Formula One, they got to make their way back around. It's just, pretty much a stroll, just, waving to the crowd, humdung. Um, and they go into turn, I want to say it was 8. It was right before turn 10. Maybe that's 9. 8, 9, whatever. Yuki flies past Ricardo, locks up. Ricardo's still just going around the turn. Yuki swings back in and like fake like runs into him. They're probably maybe a foot apart
Mm-hmm.
and swings back out. And if you look at Ricardo's onboard, he's doing all the knobs, turning the engine modes down. He's got one hand on the wheel. So if heaven forbid Yuki hits him, like it's it's going to be bad news, and it's already a terrible look. And then, of course, kudos to Ricardo because I would have been way more hot than that, but he kept his cool as much as you can on,
Mm-hmm.
the radio, the radio communications, and then we had the very classy press conference of Ricardo saying, "Yeah, we're just gonna have to talk about this. Like, this is a very normal thing of team commands and talking these strategies through. So I don't really know what his deal is." And of course, Yuki being Yuki, he's made a name for being hot headed. Was like, I don't want to talk to anybody. Blah blah blah. So it was definitely juicy, especially since this is the first race of the season. So we got 23 more races. So hopefully they can squash this because if they can't, it's going to be bad news for the team. Great for us watchers because it's drama, but definitely a weird thing that I haven't really seen before in F1.
Oh, truly, that was a brilliant play-by-play. Thank you for bringing us through that. Yeah, I have a lot of thoughts on it, but like this cooldown lap process, like you said, like it's not unusual on a cooldown lap for drivers to pass each other, right? Like some are really
Yeah.
taking it in, strolling, waving, going slow. Some just drive by, get their business done. But it was the aggressive nature that Yuki flew by Daniel to the point where he locked up just making a turn, which like you don't do that going slow.
Yeah.
And then came back, like you said, and was yeeting across. Daniel immediately on the blower, like, what was that? And then kind of just like, you know what? We'll talk about it later. But yeah, I think there's definitely a pressure in that RB team. Those two drivers know that like their
Oh yeah.
future careers are on the line. Like this is the team that moves into the Red Bull second seat.
Yeah. Get it right.
Sergio could be on the way out. That seat could be open. It might be one of them, could be somebody else, but like there's Yuki who's mad because he feels maybe like he's getting squashed for no reason when he felt like he was a better driver and when he
Mm-hmm.
outqualified Daniel. But then there's also Daniel who's like trying to play. I mean, he's not trying to play. I think he really is like trying to just be mature, be level headed. Like this is about the team. This is team orders. Like this was their best shot to be competitive. and really put the car in a
Mm-hmm.
good spot. And so both of them know they're playing a card to get somewhere else.
Yeah.
But ultimately, like, I have to give it to Ricardo. I think he didn't, like, he just did what he was told. He participated in team orders. He did his job, and Yuki kind of just went a little bit too far, a little bit too angry about it. Like, his response was like, "Are you kidding me?" When they told him to change over. Yeah, to the reporters, he's like, "I don't want to talk about it. It's whatever. Like, it didn't even matter. Like, he didn't pass him anyways." So basically saying like it was useless. So not a great look. They have some work to do over at VCarb to get that cohesion together.
Yeah. I mean, to the point that you brought up, there's a lot of pressure because this could lead to a seat at Red Bull. But
Mm-hmm.
let's say Sergio does good this year and gets re-signed. This is also an audition for the rest of the grid
Mm-hmm.
because do they really want to be stuck in the quote unquote junior team? So there's a lot of pressure not just within the team, but looking forward and outside of it, just in case it doesn't go their way. And Yuki's been constantly looked over, and I think
Mm-hmm.
rightfully so because of his temper, and
Yeah.
he doesn't always bring it. So I'm sure in his opinion he shouldn't be getting looked over. So there's a lot of factors and stressors going into it. So it's gonna make for an interesting season there, Jared.
We'll see. We'll see what they figure out. But that's the race. That's the Bahrain
Yep.
Grand Prix. Thank you for listening to us waffle about our thoughts and opinions. I think it's the first race. There's so much potential, so many unknown
Mm-hmm.
questions still, so many more questions out of this first race. So we'll continue to stay in tune with F1. We'll continue to chat about it and the other happens in the sports. But I think that's all we really that's all we have time for. We are well out of time here. So
Yeah,
uh,
we got to cut it off here, man. But that was
yeah,
fun. It was good talking about the race. Good getting the podcast going. I hope Will is enjoying his honeymoon. Nice cocktail on the beach, enjoying
mm-hmm.
life. So we'll see what happens next week, man. We got a whole nother race next week.
Whole nother race, whole nother week of sports. What other records will be
Yep.
broken? What are the things to chat about? So
Yeah.
that's
Maybe
us.
MLB will fix their jerseys. Who knows?
Who knows? Yeah, let's get a little jersey update. But anyways, before we ramble too much, Peyton, take us home.
Yeah, guys, we appreciate you being here. This has been a latest episode of F1. Nope, not that flights. It is not those flights. This is Barrel Banter. This is Peyton. I am followed up by Jared, and I'm really scrambling because I made that mess up. We're missing Will. Cheers, guys. We'll see you next week.
Cheers, brother.
Ding.
You've just listened to an episode of Barrel Banter Podcast. Subscribe to the show so you'll be notified every time a new episode drops. Support the show by giving us a 5-star rating and sharing with your friends. Follow us on social media at Barrel Banter Podcast.